What made you say yes to Raising Kanan, the series? I loved seeing you show up in this world.
I met the showrunner, Sasha Penn, and we were talking about the show. I was actually at the launch of the second season. We were talking about the show. I told him how much I liked the show and all. And if it was something that I was interested in doing, I was like, yeah, I would love to. It kind of grew from there. It also was something that I never get to do. It was a character the opposite of what I normally do. And that was something that attracted me to it as well. And it shows my range.
Absolutely. I was going to say, because we normally see you relatively as a good guy, but in this one, you're giving us baddie vibes. What is it that you look for at this point in your career? What has to be on the page for you to say, yes, I do want to do this?
Something that's going to challenge me.
It's the last of what you fronted Ronnie and Kanan. Y'all leaving now?
We're even on what we invested. We ain't even on our return.
Think we put up that money just to get the same back? We give money to make money.
We own a piece of the business.
Like you said, there was a character that the total opposite of what I normally am asked to do. Good writing is always the thing that draws you to a role. And what it is about good writing is interesting and real depiction. And there's a certain truth and authenticness to the characters. What I like about this show is the fact that it kind of taps into an ugly part of human nature, but you also understand why. If people are not allowed to be a part of the mainstream economy, they're going to look for the underground economy. Normally, it's going to come with some criminality. So you understand people's impulses and the reason they do something. Also with this show, it's always never, really good writing is always never about just what the surface is. And while these are gangsters and criminals and violent people, it's really a family drama. Who's important to you? What's important to you? What are your principles? What are your values? What do you live by? And how important family is. If you break those family ties, how unstable you become and how dangerous that is for you, because nothing counts so much as family.
Clearly, you are not aware of one of investing's foundational pillars, the return.
Take money to make money. You took from us, now you making for us.
Any deal you made with Ronnie went in the ground with him.
With all due respect, this conversation doesn't involve you, Rock. We financed Kanan and Ronnie's enterprise, not yours.
You really helped, via the work that you've given us over the course of your career, mold the culture, and I never know how actors feel about talking about, bringing to life these really culture-shifting characters on these culture-shifting shows or films, but you obviously have contributed that. I mean, we can name off several, but we could start with Bunk from The Wire. What does that mean to you because I know this isn't the first time that you've heard a similar sentiment before, but what does that mean for you that the choices that you've made ultimately have resulted in creating, the culture that still is very much prevalent in 2025, even though a show like The Wire was so long ago?
First of all, it's a privilege. That is a humbling thing to know that you've done some work that actually is long-lasting. Really have to attribute it to really good writing, really good production, a really great ensemble of actors to work with. And I am honored that I was able to portray a character that actually is a reflection of the men and women that I met as I studied to do the character. There is a real Bunk in Baltimore, Officer Requier, Detective Requier. It's a tribute to him, specifically to African-American police officers. In studying them, I discovered why someone from the community becomes a police officer. And I think that's the most important lesson we learn from the culture, which is they sit there and they said, man, my neighborhood was not reflected in all that crime. That wasn't the Miss Ann and the Mr. Joes that I knew. 99% of the community of people, working class folks, working poor a lot of times, who have to get up in the morning and try to go out and make a living. And so it's a tribute to them that they said, the 1% that make it tough, that disproportionately affect our community with crime, I want to make sure that I protect those Mr. Joes and Miss Anns And that's why they became police officers. And I was so happy to have the writers bring that into the script, in particular, the scene that I had with Omar, where you realize we're from the same neighborhood. We went to the same school. We are connected. Aren't you that guy that ran with the stick? I played lacrosse. He goes, yeah, I remember you. We remember each other from Edmondson High School. And in that scene, I said, man, you know what this neighborhood was like. No more bodies. And I'm gonna challenge you to actually do better. That is something that is a part of our culture too, that we have to be able to talk to those who are having a disproportionate effect on our communities with their bad behavior, that we have to recognize that, holding a mirror up to nature, as it were, as Shakespeare says. That is special to me, to know that I've made that impact. And The Wire was the canary in the mine. It is, if we don't watch, if we don't recognize this, what's happening? These communities, the poverty that's in the community is made, and we're seeing that today. I mean, what is going to happen to this country when we are cutting so much of the services or anything that might help people get to a place of living a better life, all for the ease of a few billionaire friends, right? And so people always say, oh, that's political. That's not political. We're watching it. We literally are watching it, right? And so I'm honored to be a part of that, because that's the role of art.
Yeah.
A place where we reflect on who we are and comment on what our values are, and then go out and act on those values. So to point out that dysfunction in the American, the urban America, hopefully inspires people to go out and try to affect change and change the paradigm, right?
Yeah.
Once we recognize it, to then go out and change it.
Yeah. We were talking about this in the newsroom recently, and it's that you have participated in some of the most pivotal films and series that have really shaped Black culture and American culture. I could be here for a while naming them off, but Treme, Selma, Get on the Bus, Malcolm X, Waiting to Exhale, and so many more. I want to ask you probably one of the most difficult questions anyone has ever asked you. Can you tell me your favorite roles that you brought to life over the years and why?
Oh yeah, wow, that is a difficult question. I distinctly remember the night we were shooting in Phoenix, in Waiting to Exhale, and Russell Williams, the sound guy, actually said to me, he said, man, this is gonna be such a memorable scene. It is going to be a classic.
Yeah.
And I said, oh no, he says, it's gonna be a classic. He called it. Michael of Waiting to Exhale is the thing that really put me on the map. I loved working on Malcolm X. First of all, just to see what I saw as we were doing it, I knew that it was a masterpiece. And I knew the politics of it also. It was masterful work by Denzel Washington and Spike Lee. Angela Bassett also in that. Delroy Lindo was so wonderful in that. Al Freeman, as he played Elijah Muhammad. My Al Freeman impersonation.
It was perfect.
And so I knew it was a masterpiece while we were doing it. So that participating in that was just a real honor. I saw the politics of it because it was that year that it was so clear that it should have been the Oscar winner. I watched this Hollywood brought out another film that had already been put away and brought it back out, and how the media jumped on this bandwagon to kind of pump it and pump it and pump it, so that because the politics of Malcolm X winning that year would have been too overwhelming, they were afraid of it.
Yeah.
And art is not a competition, but the business is. The business was to make sure Malcolm X did not win. Scent of a Woman was already in the can, already put away, and they brought it back out. And then all of these articles started coming out saying, oh, what a great film it was, what a great film, and until it won. And Denzel was not, didn't win. Well, it's not a competition. You saw that ugly part of the business. So that's two. And more recently, Selma. This is the 10th year anniversary of Selma. And actually it was just a few days ago with the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday on Edmund Pettus Bridge. I think about shooting that scene I was fortunate enough to be the man, Hosea Williams, knowing that I was going to be a part of a seminal moment in a very important film. I cherished that. And I remember once we finished, I looked over the side of the bridge, all the equipment has gone away, and I could just feel and hear all those souls of the people who had died to give us the right to vote, who were in those waters of the Alabama River, saying, tell our story, Wendell, make sure they know, they don't forget about us. I literally could feel them and hear them. Don't forget about us. Don't go away from here and don't tell our story. I think of all those people that lost their lives lonely in the middle of the night at the hands of their neighbors, you know, saying, hopefully my death will not be in vain. But last but not least, you know, bunk, that would be the first line in my obituary. That was a socially significant piece of work, The Wire. That's a classic, and what makes something a classic is it speaks to that time in the past, and it'll speak to the future. It speaks to our humanity across time and place, age, gender, race. It speaks to a common thread of humanity in all of us. And every time I meet a fan of The Wire, I cannot tell you how different they are. You know, old white women, young black men, police officers, thugs, and the hoodlums. They all connect with The Wire, and it's because it was speaking something that was truthful.
Yeah.
So that's my catalog. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, Kelley.
No, that was great. Are you kidding me? Thank you so much for that. You know, let's go back to the beginning. I mean, what made you want to do this work in the first place? Like, where did that bug first get sparked for you?
You know, it's really interesting now that, you know, I'm at this point in my career and the work is saying something, and I realize how important it is to be an artist to say something with your work. Entertainment is just a byproduct of what we do. What you really want to do is have an impact and say something with the work. And it's because of what made me start. I was inspired by a group that I actually never saw. Free Southern Theater was a theater company based in New Orleans during the Civil Rights Movement, and they would go out on the marches and do plays. And they would go out during the Civil Rights era and do plays out in the Mississippi Delta when people were marching in the camps and going around the South and doing these plays under the threat of violence. The Ku Klux Klan one time told them, you know, if y'all do that play, we're gonna come and get you, basically. Under the threat of violence, they would do the play and not come out for the curtain call and just leave to get away from the Klan. And they were based in New Orleans. My parents would go and see them, and I would always ask them, well, tell me about the play, tell me about the play. And as the group disbanded, I worked with some of them who had worked in Free Southern Theater. Actually just lost a week ago one of my mentors from that era. His name was Chikula Chajuwa, who gave me my first job in a play called Ritual Murder. I was about 14, 15 years old. And they inspired me to become an actor because I saw what it was like to be an actor and the impact it would have on the community. It was a community event. And the play didn't mean anything if it didn't have a message, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting hearing that and knowing that about you, because when you, again, look at your credits over the course of your career, it feels like that really was a guiding light for you to, and I know part of that is perhaps being a Black actor, but it feels like the guiding light was really to not just entertain, but also inform by nature of what you do for a career. Does that assessment seem about right?
But what people forget is what thoughts are to the individual, where you think about your life, reflect on where you've been and where you hope to go, who you hope to become, where you've triumphed, where you failed, what those thoughts are to the individual. Art should be for the community as a whole, collectively. It's the place where we come together and reflect on who we are, where we've been, who we hope to become, our triumphs, our failures, decide what our values are, and then go out and act on those values. That's the role of art. The Greeks would come together and hear the same stories every year of Oedipus, of Lysistrata, the comedy even, of the women holding back from the men.
It's a great play.
Medea, you know, and you see what it is, the hubris of life, that pride that can be so self-destructive. And it's a lesson learned. It's the morality plays, that the lessons where we always have to be reminded of. And that's a spiritual thing. We go through that in our religions and our services of stories and scripture and sacred texts that remind us of our humanity and the mistakes that we can make and how we should try to live better lives. And that's why some people feel as though the theater and art can be like a religion. You know, it's the thing that you're called to do, a vocation. And it's really just speaking to your true humanity. And I guess that has always been something that has helped me make decisions about the sort of work that I want to do. But it's evident in good writing and good material and good drama and good comedy. We learn something about ourselves. It's why we turn off the lights and why we are attracted to different projects, because we see ourselves within the images, right? And that's why it's important to put images out there so that people can see themselves, you know, so that there is some diversity. And I'm not going to stay away from that word because of the ignorance of some people who can't appreciate what that means, you know? Diversity, because the more specific you are, the more universal your story becomes, because it's truthful. You can tell me a story about a little old lady, and it will speak to me if I see truthfully what she goes through and what she learns about herself. Then I can take that lesson and go out in my life and learn something.
What role hasn't made its way across your desk that you would love to get? You know, I would say before it's all said and done, but I know that you have so much more time to go, you know, with this career, so I don't want to make it seem like that, but what right now, you know, would you love to see?
Okay, it's okay for you to say that, because I am in the third act of life.
Okay.
You know, and so I am reminded of that. I remind myself of that. So that I can do those things that I want to do. I still have a lot of time left, but it's I have to act, you know. I've said in interviews before, I still have fear, but now I have courage. Courage is acting in the face of fear, not in the absence of it. So one of those roles I'm going to attack next year, Othello. I'm doing at the Shakespeare Theater Company in DC. I would like to do Richard III. I would like to do Walter Lee, Raisin in the Sun. I am preparing and trying to do the life of Harold Washington, who was the first Black mayor of Chicago.
Yes, absolutely.
A limited series called The Reign of Harold Washington. We are shopping around, so those of you who are listening and hearing and reading this interview, reach out to me. It's a great role. It's Shakespearean in nature. I mean, from the grassroots of community in Chicago to the heights of becoming its mayor at a time that was so difficult and fraught with so much danger, really, political danger, and the impact that he had on people's lives. So that's a role that I would like to do. Richard.
That's incredible. We've never even seen his life story hinted at in any other piece of art. So that's really great. That's such a hidden story, I think.
That is a hidden story. There's some stuff that I would like to produce also. I have just discovered a woman who was the right hand of the Pan-African movement in Africa, a speechwriter and advisor to Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, and her name was Andre Blouin. Oh, look up that name. This was an amazing woman. She was like a spy, like Mahatma. She was clandestine. She was like Marlene Dietrich, who was actually a spy, and Julia Childs, the chef. Did you know that she was CIA? Nobody knows that. She was the CIA of Paris.
What?
And that story I've been trying to get out there. I've actually given it to a couple of artists that I know, women that I know who would be great to try to get that story out there as producers and as a director and an actor that I've given it to. So those are that. Harold Washington in particular is one that comes to mind.
That's going to be incredible. Before I let you go, I always love to ask you a sports question because I know you're a New Orleans Saints fan naturally.
Yeah, do that.
But I did not know that you also were a fan of soccer. Tell me about that. Where does that come from?
Okay, this is great. So I go to the wedding of Dominic West in Ireland, a newspaper was there, journalist was there from Dublin, and said, "Who's your favorite football team?" And I said, "Oh man, the Saints, lifelong, all the time." And he went back to Dublin. He wrote in the paper, "Wendell Pierce, plays bunk on the wire. I saw him in Glyn, Ireland, and he's a big fan of the St. Patrick's Football Club, the Mighty Saints." And I was like, "Oh no, no." And so, and people online reached out to me, and all of a sudden how did you become a fan of the St. Patrick's Football Club in Dublin? And I was like, I've been a lifelong Saints fan, and I played it up for about a year.
Oh my God.
And then I had to come up and say it was all a mistake. I meant the New Orleans Saints, the American football team.
Right.
But I have since become a fan of St. Patrick's Football Club. We won the championship a couple of years ago.
Yes.
About 10 years ago, and there's a picture of me on the internet, where I woke up like at 3 o'clock in the morning so I could watch the match, like this. We won.
Yeah.
And that is on one of my lists to actually go to Dublin and see the game and see the Saints, my other Saints.
That is the best story I have heard. I literally have tears in my eyes. So you're a fan of two different Saints football teams? Yes,
I'm too. Yes, I am now a Saints fan of the New Orleans Saints and the St. Patrick's Football Club of Dublin.
I'm sure Dominic has had a good laugh about that one too.
Many a time. And to this day, every once in a while, I get a St. Pat's fan go, "Excuse me, mate, how did you become a fan?" So I get to tell them the story.
That is the best story.